Hey everybody. So for starters, I just got up from a nap because, well, it was an accident. I didn't mean to take a nap. It's just kind of the way it happens sometimes. So for the past weekend, Friday was my birthday, and between Thursday and yesterday, we were at Acen, which is Anime Central, which is this huge, like 30,000 person anime convention that we go to every year. It's my yearly escape from the real world, my vacation. So I was there for the weekend, which is why I'm exhausted because we were moving from like 9 a.m. to like 2 a.m. doing things at the panel or at the con, and then we'd come back to the hotel, crash, get up, and do it all over again. Also, I walked about 15 miles in 2 days, but it was a blasty blast. More on that another day because this is my writing vlog, and that's what it's for. But the reason I mentioned it is because while I was there at this 30,000 person anime convention, I took advantage of the opportunity to try to push my book on people. So I think you guys might remember that I made these little cards, which is just a tiny, short little synopsis, and Ash is the weasel, and the cover of the book. And it tells you where to buy the book. I made these with the intention of if I talk to somebody about my book and they sound interesting, I can just give them this. That way, they don't forget about it, they don't forget what it's called, and they know where to find it. Which I thought was brilliant. I'm smart. I got about 500 of these for like $30 on Vistaprint, which is cool. But I was smart and I took them with me to Acen, and I wised up about halfway through Saturday, and they have water stands at Acen for people obviously who are dehydrated. There's like two in every hallway, so I just started dropping these by the water table. I think I left about 100 of them around con, and at one point I actually got brave enough to sit down at a table with people during lunch. People randomly talk to each other all the time at Acen. It's one of the few places that they will talk freely with strange introverted people who never leave home, because we're all like that, and it's less awkward when you're around a billion other awkward people. So I sat down, which was really hard for me, with a table of like 10 people, and asked them if they had a minute of their time and if I could have it. And I told them about my book, and I gave out like four of them. They sounded, somewhat interested. So between those 100 and the few that I gave to those people at the table, um, I'm anxiously awaiting to see if it translates into any sales. But then I also have this other story for you. I'm pulling it up on my phone. Because I was at work today and I got this message from one of my coworkers. So this guy I trained in Livonia, he bought my book, and I would give you his name, but I didn't ask permission for that, so I won't. He asked me, he said, hey, are you at the Comic-Con thingy in Chicago this weekend? And I said, yeah, it's called Acen, and I was there. And he says, okay, my neighbor has something about your book. And I said, haha, did he find my card? He goes, yeah, he was a big, heavy-set black man dressed like Pikachu Pimp. And I was like, wow, that's fantastic. I said, had you seen it on your Facebook before or something? Because, Tom bought the book. Oh, I just said his name. Tom bought the book, and I thought maybe his buddy had seen it on Facebook and then saw my card sitting around at Acen and was like, oh yeah, that looks familiar, and picked it up. And he goes, no, we were talking a bit ago, and he had a bunch of stuff from there, and one of the things was your card. He's not even on my Facebook. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. And he goes, I was bragging and said I'm friends with the author. So, that's good. That lets me know that dropping these off was a good idea because somebody did randomly just pick one up and go, oh, that looks interesting, and brought it home. Um, People are still moseying on home from Mason, so, and they're probably pretty broke. So I haven't sold any yet, but I guess we'll find out. So moving on. Obviously, because I was on vacation, I didn't do any writing because I was at con like 18 hours a day and no writing. The good news is my brain is working on overdrive right now. I have come up with all sorts of thoughts for all sorts of stories across several works in process, which is a horrible thing to have happen because you can't work on all of them at once. Um, but it's good news because it means my brain is working, and that when I do sit down and write, that nice things are going to happen. Because it's like it's really working. Like a bunch of cool things are happening. I did want to mention that another thing that's happening in my writing right now is that Stella is working on Achillea for me again. She's not really so much editing, but betaing again. Um, and she's at about chapter 13 of 30, so she's about halfway done. And good news is, I don't have to throw it in the trash. She's found. Sorry. So she's about halfway through it, and there's nothing major that would prevent me from publishing it this time. She thinks that the changes that I made, as you may remember, I deleted an entire character and about 80,000 words, and reinserted about 70,000 words. It was a lot of work. I had to rework the whole thing, but she said that it worked, so that's good, and it's publishable now after another edit. She did mention one fairly negative critique that it's not really a big deal, but it's something I could totally fix. Saying that the characters need a little bit more background, which I actually heard a little bit for The Blood of Nerys, and I could totally fix because it's not published yet, and they're all original characters, so it's very easy to insert background. The reason my books are currently sort of short on background is actually another remnant of me trying to be traditionally published, because the standards that they set forth are sort of like, don't give too much background and info dump. So I was doing that thing where you sort of expect your reader to pick up on context clues and sort of piece together the things for themselves, and either I interpreted their meaning incorrectly, which is entirely possible, or I took it a little bit too much to heart and basically dropped you in the middle of a timeline and didn't really explain their histories very well. So, and my readers have said, I'm missing background here, and I kind of want to know where they came from and what happened before, and it makes perfect sense. So another reason why I don't like listening to other people when they tell me how to write, and I'm going to stop doing that from now on. Or at least I'm going to try. So I have to add in some more background, which is not a big deal. Yeah, I have plenty of time to do that. And some other things on Achillea is that since my brain is on overdrive, I am once again considering turning it back into the trilogy that I originally envisioned, which is great and awful, because it means I have a lot of work left to do, and it's going to be a lot longer before anybody gets a hold of the book, because if I write a series, I don't publish the series until the whole series is finished, so that I don't mess anything up. But one of the things that I realized on my drive back from Chicago is that Achillea needs a mythology. Sort of how, like, Tolkien wrote The Lord of the Rings to provide a mythology for England. Achillea needs a mythology to provide the backbone for fully fleshing out this world that they live in. I had sort of a mythology before, and I abandoned it and reworked it. So it needs a different mythology than I had originally envisioned, but basically what I mean by that is it needs, like, an origin story. Like, this is how the world started, this is the gods and the religion, and I mentioned fairy tales in Achillea. The fairy tales need to have a basis in truth and spiritual energy and whatnot. So anyway, that needs to happen, and I started to think about what that actually is, and I think it's going to be really awesome. So I got to work on that, and once I get that world all built up, then I can start to consider building more stories into this world. My intention was always to have a fully developed world of my own that I could just continuously go back to, especially if I had characters that I can continue to recycle. Like, a lot of people like Heike, and I like Heike too. And if I could continue to write stories that have her in that, fans of the books will buy them forever. So, and she's really easy to write because I know her really well. So if I could have that fully developed story and the fully developed character, basically I have unlimited writing material forever. So that was always the plan. And now that I've got this sort of picture in my head, I think I can finally nail that down. Um, some ideas that I have for the future of the book are side stories for the main operatives of Achillea. So, like Lyda, Ciel, and Naniha, each of them would get their own book. Um, I have a trilogy in the future planned, so it would be probably 10 years after the ending of the Achillea, the first Achillea trilogy, would be another trilogy. Um, that's interesting, and I've got grand plans for that one, and it's gonna be so fucking awesome. And I had mentioned it before that I had this fantastic idea, and I still can't share it with you because it is so good and spoilerific that I can't even mention it on video. But I cannot wait to get there, and I think that you guys are gonna love it. Um, where does this leave me? Um, I think I'm writing a sequel for NaNoWriMo, so book 2 will be happening in November, and knowing me and NaNoWriMo, that's a really good sign because it means book 2 will probably get finished during NaNoWriMo, and that's yes. And then maybe I'll write book 3 sometime in the spring. And then finally, the capstone of this video is that I wrote this tiny novella on a prompt that Frankie gave me about a year ago called The Shiny for Trick, and it's just about this cute little character who's like basically a forever child, and she lives in her own magical world alone and wears a bunch of keys, and basically her entire existence is to return lost items to where they go, and it's all like magical keys and magical boxes, and it's kind of like a sort of dark fairy tale that's reminiscent of like a Studio Ghibli short. But it's been complete for a very long time, and Frankie's now working on a cover for me, so hopefully you'll have an update on that soon, and should be publishing it pretty quickly. Um, so that's it for me, and sorry for being tired. And so I will be doing, I think, the Tuesday, Wednesday segment this week, which is whatever Wednesday and the Our World Tuesday. So you will hear from me over the next 2 days. See you guys later. Have a great night.